Joining us from Melbourne is historian and folklorist David Waldron. Good morning to you, David.
Okay.
Now, that footage had lots of people intrigued for days. When you looked at it, could you tell that it was just 14-year-old rescue cat Toby?
Yeah, its body language, its movement, all that seemed consistent with a domestic cat. The tail particularly looked quite like a domestic cat. And one of the other problems too with these kinds of shots is it's very difficult to detect scale, and humans are notoriously bad at trying to detect scale, particularly in difficult lighting.
It does look like a bigger cat, so I can see where there may have been some credence to the theory. Now, it was Toby, as we know. It's not the first time we've heard of theories of a black panther surfacing, and we seem to love them. Why do these theories come about every now and then?
Well, I think one issue is that it's so deeply entrenched into Australian folk culture, particularly in the countryside. The earliest story I've found of big cat-like scares is from 1836 near Adelaide, so it's really, really deeply entrenched in the cultural psyche. The other thing is when you look at how these stories came about, they're really deeply entrenched in major agricultural issues that Australia has had to face. For example, the problem of introduced species by the Acclimatisation Society in the mid-19th century. You get this feeling with, after what happened with the rats and the feral pigs and the feral goats and, the Rabbit Control Act where feral cats are introduced to keep the rabbit population down, and of course rabbits themselves from Whittlesea. People get very anxious with the first travelling menageries and circuses and the exotic animal trade in the 19th century of, what happens if these cats get loose and suddenly are up to our ears in large predators. That's a very real concern, and there certainly are a lot of documented cases of individual cats getting loose, and if you go through the papers, you'll sometimes find where people have hunted them down and shot them and put them up. The Zenarded's puma in 1922 is a good example of that. It was an escapee from Perry Brothers Circus, and circuses before World War II were often very sloppy at reporting when they lost animals.
Yeah. Right. But out of all of the urban legends that are out there, the legend of this Blue Mountains panther really does seem to come into the fore frequently. Why do you think that is? Do you think that there is a black panther in the Blue Mountains?
Well, first thing I'd suggest is there's nothing inherently absurd about the idea. We know individual cats have gotten loose and so on. The problem's simply definitive evidence. You get cats found after bushfires, you'd have roadkill, they'd come up on trail cams, but so far, while I've heard stories about this, we haven't actually had them come to the fore in any reliable way. But, the issue of introduced species is a big one in Australia, and certainly if you look at Australian customs, pumas particularly are seen as an incredibly high-risk animal for the Australian environment. So there's nothing absurd about it, and there certainly have been times where people have seen a big cat and it's actually turned out to really be a big cat because it's an escapee from somewhere.
Sure, well, people will keep looking, and I'm sure we'll get more social media finds. No black panther this time. However, we do have a black blob that has appeared over your right shoulder. So maybe
it's raining.
Maybe we have uncovered another mystery this morning on Weekend Sunrise.
And then a bird just flew in the background, or was it a bird?
Sure.
Yeah, it could be.